Welcome to this edition of Weather to Watch. The main center event is this huge winter storm that's taking shape that will spread a big snow from New Mexico all the way to the eastern seaboard, New York City, and embedded in there somewhere could be 1 foot totals. Also to the south of that, a potential crippling ice storm is developing from around Dallas to the Carolinas. Let's dive into it. Thanks for joining me. I'm meteorologist Ted Keller. Been talking about this, really speculating about it for more than a week, but only within the last, let's say, 4 days has this really begun to take shape. So here are the players. If we take a look at the visible satellite loop as the sun sets and we change from visible to IR up there in the northeast, that's what that line is. But in the central U.S., things are clearing out, but this is where all the action, of course, is going to take place here before you know it. We have one little weak frontal system here producing some rain, a very fast-moving system here dragging in the cold air that will help to set up the winter storm. And you can see something swirling off the Los Angeles coast there. So if we take a look at the 500 millibar chart overlaid on top of that, we have basically another short wave in what is the long wave trough. So that's this little dip right here. The long wave trough is right here. This is helping to reinforce as it dives this way. Coming in behind that, more cold air that will dive into this area here and set the stage for a winter storm. Then we need something to trigger the lifting, and that's going to come mostly from this system lifting out just off to the west of Los Angeles, but also kind of coupling with this strong jet stream flow, and it's all going to converge right in this area as you saw in our opening graphic. At the surface here this afternoon on this Wednesday, we have again this weak frontal system here that's producing some rain. I'll show you radar in a minute. Then we have this pretty good front moving through here. There is some precipitation along that. I'll talk about that. But there's also some temperature changes worth noting. While it's balmy, almost freezing just south of Chicago, it drops all the way down to 3 as we get up to the Canadian border there north of Fargo. So there is some cold air settling in. This has been a pretty windy front, too. We've had wind gusts in Iowa where there is a wind warning in effect. Over 40, even I see a 64 mile per hour wind gust around Des Moines at 4 o'clock. So this is really serious stuff, but it's kind of concentrated just in this area, and will continue, that wind gust pattern will continue to move east tonight. There is a extreme cold warning in effect for all of Wisconsin, up to Minneapolis, up into North Dakota, including most of the state of Minnesota for tonight as that system continues to roll on in. If we take a look at the radar loop, this is rain here, but this is mostly snow here across Iowa and northern Illinois, as is most of this precipitation up here into south and southeastern Canada. Just changing our gaze to the southeast, we see a pretty good band of mostly rain, maybe a clap of thunder here or there. That extends from Louisiana all the way up just west of the Appalachians and now crossing into that mountain zone as we get into the evening hours. So let's take a look at that snow update. Well, here are the advisories, and I've been watching this expand all day today. So this winter storm watch goes along the same line as that opening graphic from New Mexico. Hasn't quite gone all the way to the East Coast, but it will. And this goes into effect mostly start around Friday afternoon. Some of them start Friday evening, going into Saturday and Sunday. Of course, as the storm continues to progress in this direction, you can kind of figure out where that watch applies to you. And yes, there will be winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings likely forthcoming as we get closer to the event. So what kind of event are we talking about? Let's take a look at a couple of different perspectives. So the National Weather Service snow forecast through 6 p.m. on Saturday. And the yellow area here is a 6-inch band. So we have the darker orange is an 8-inch band. So it has northwestern Oklahoma, south central Kansas in that 8-inch or more band, with the yellow at about a half foot that cuts from that same area of Kansas, and then from the panhandle of both Texas and Oklahoma straight into northern Arkansas and southern Missouri. And if you watch this channel a lot, you know I live right there. So we're right on the 6-inch border according to the National Weather Service official forecast so far. And this is through Saturday evening. There may be some light snow left over behind that. So let's take a look at the various models. At this distance, we have a couple of choices now. By distance, I mean how many hours, days is it to the actual event. So this is still the ensemble model, the GEFS. And so this is again, kind of a safe thing to look at because it averages the extremes a little bit and helps you to get a more blended kind of forecast. So if you look at this here, when it changes to that purple color, which is right there, that's 6 inches. So that is Oklahoma City, Tulsa, northern Arkansas, maybe getting into southern Missouri. And this is through Monday morning, so this snow continues into Kentucky, the Virginias, into parts of Pennsylvania as well, and just leaves the coast by Monday. So this is a multi-day event that we're talking about. So that's the GEFS. The European version of this, the EPS, is similar but a little more aggressive on snow more to the north. So the purple color, same scale, 6-inch total, has that almost into central Missouri, with this darker purple almost getting, that's about 10, 11 inches there in northern Arkansas, let's say from Fort Smith eastward, and it gets really aggressive as it continues to move east into the Appalachians of West Virginia, where that does exceed 1 foot. Again, this is the EPS sort of total snowfall blended over all runs of the ensemble that they do. So the National Weather Service blend of models is really just a suggestion that we're going to take all the models. So now we're going to add one more to this, that we are now within range of the so-called regional models like the NAM, which only run out to 84 hours, but that's being integrated into this forecast now. And if you do that, it has certainly been a little bit more aggressive with its snowfall totals, because you can look out here in Kansas and Oklahoma, now we're getting into that darker purple color, 12 feet or more, certainly. Again, this is through Monday morning, so I extended this. This actually looks a little bit, farther out into the future. And so a lot of Missouri and northern Arkansas is kind of blotchy looking, but it's basically in this 6 to 10 inch total. So that could be interesting. So the probability of snow greater than 8 inches is sitting at about, let's see, we got the first blue color here is 40%. So that covers Wichita, Springfield, Missouri, Fayetteville, Tulsa, all in that. And then if you go up to the next shaded blue, that's a 50% chance. So there's a 50% chance from just south of Springfield into much of northwest Arkansas of more than 8 inches of snow, and even a little band of 60% probability there in northwest Arkansas. If you want a different perspective of all the models and how they're looking, and I will do Springfield a favor and put it in this one, as most of my people watching this are still in Springfield, not quite a national audience yet, but you can see now the red is the NAM. So this is just now coming to focus, and the reason why everybody's buzzing and going crazy is because this thing has us up anywhere between 7 and 10 inches of snow. And this would happen on Saturday, basically, maybe late Friday night, early Saturday morning. Now, the other longer range models are kind of indicating here, they're still sticking around that 4 to 5 inch total. And even one of the NAM runs right there is only going up to 3. So again, there's lots of room still until that system comes ashore in California to move this around both in time and also in amount. And so there's just a lot of things we still need to consider here. Now, I just switched this same graph to Tulsa, and their amp goes to 14, meaning that, look, the scale over here goes all the way up to 14 now, and they're looking at a foot of snow possibly from those shorter range models. From the longer range models, they're stopping at about a half foot, give or take an inch or two. So what about the timing of this? Well, we will use the NAM to get an idea of when all this is going to happen. So Friday at 6 p.m., this is where they're depicting the precipitation type. The blue is snow. This may be unclear. I'll explain it to you. This is actually sleet. You can see at the scale down here on the bottom right, with no freezing rain showing up yet. Now, sleet is an interesting thing. Usually when you have a layered winter storm like this that doesn't have a definite cyclogenesis bomb, and it's just overrunning precipitation, you get a layering effect. It goes from it goes from snow to sleet to freezing rain to rain, like a stepladder. That's usually what occurs. So far, no freezing rain in this at 6 p.m., but the snow is breaking out. And sleet and snow can sometimes exchange a little bit, and this is not always a solid, line. There can be blends and times when it's snowing and then sleeting. Sleet tends to accumulate less. It's like little pellets. You can hear it pinging off your windshield if you ever get sleet. So that's the difference. So if we go ahead now to Saturday morning, so the sleet area expands, you're starting to see some freezing rain in West Texas there. Nothing showing up in terms of this model, maybe a little bit right there, but the snow is going gangbusters and is affecting those areas that have the highest probability of snow accumulation, which runs roughly from Oklahoma City into northwest Arkansas, that area there. And then Saturday, that's AM. Saturday PM, It's still snowing across all of this area here. The heaviest is probably in southwest Missouri and getting increasingly into the Boot Heel and south of St. Louis at that time. Large areas sleep, but notice that the freezing rain spit out isn't as aggressive. However, I think this model may not be grasping that all altogether, really. So anytime between the boundaries, like here and here, you have a chance for rapid expansion. And the difference between those two precipitation types from a thermal aspect, just looking at the temperatures, isn't that great. So in other words, it can go from sleet to freezing rain in a heartbeat. So here's EPS's total rain, freezing rain possibilities. So what all this does is it takes a look at the QPF, quantitative precipitation, the amount of rainfall you'll get, and then if it freezes, that's what you would get. So you take a look at this, you see some pretty high totals there in southern parts of Arkansas. And the probability of ice accumulating greater than a half inch, which is usually the amount I use to start saying, okay, we got some trouble here. We're going to have some power lines and trees down. So that probability, that's the second blue here. So that's a 50% probability tucked away in southern Arkansas there. And that's just through Saturday evening, because this particular probability product only goes out 72 hours. So there's also a lot of cold with this. Let's take a look at those temperature trends. Well, I'm recording this on Wednesday, so Thursday's high temperatures are still pretty balmy. So here in Springfield, Missouri, still about the same high as we had today, but look what's starting to happen in the northern plains. High temperatures below zero in Fargo, for example, in Duluth, with a high of only 9 in the Minneapolis area. Meanwhile, in a kind of a U-shaped pattern, the country is actually still pretty mild. Well, the bottom's going to fall out of that for sure. By the time we go to Saturday, we're looking at readings that are going to be 30 degrees below their normal highs in western Oklahoma and western parts of Texas. So the high will only be 9 in Tulsa with snow on the ground. Also 9 in Columbia, Missouri. The high temperature will be -5 in Fargo, and the high will be 0 in Dubuque. Florida remaining warm, hanging on for dear life. I think this particular cold snap will spare them, but there might be one late in the month that does not. Anyway, that's Saturday's high. And then on Monday, the difference here is I've noticed I'm actually doing low temperature departure here. I don't always do this one, but I think it's worth noting on the low temperature side that we're going to get down to -4 here in Springfield. Snowpack helps, so you see a lot of really cold readings right along here, but a plethora of minus readings. And by the way you read this, the actual numbers of the lows for the cities, and then the color scale is how far below normal it is. And then on Monday, not much of a recovery. Highs below freezing as far south as Birmingham and the southern border of Arkansas, Louisiana. Dallas will only get to 33. Again, South Florida hanging on, and much of the West showing a little bit of a moderating pattern. And the last thing we'll show you here is the probability, the confidence level of it being below normal next week from Tuesday through Saturday. And it rarely gets up to about 80 and 90%, but it sure does in the Virginias and the Carolinas for that time period. I'll bring you another update for folks listening to me in the Ozarks. Tomorrow's will be a heads up, so it'll be much more focused on Missouri and Arkansas. And I may do another one of those on Friday and maybe even another one on Saturday, so those will become more repetitious. This one that I do, Weather to Watch, is about every other day or so, just so you get a kind of a handle on when I do these updates. So if you like snow, it looks encouraging for the first time really this winter for southwest Missouri, and it's a big storm that affects much of the country. Thanks for watching this edition of Weather to Watch. It comes out every other day, or as the weather necessitates. Please remember to share this with your friends, subscribe to the channel, or at the very least, like what you just watched. Thanks.